Final Fantasy VII Remake is so much more than a remake. Before I say another single word, please be warned that there are spoilers in this video. If you haven't played the original Final Fantasy, if you haven't played the Final Fantasy VII Remake, do not watch this video. And if you do listen beyond this point, then don't come blaming us. Spoiler alert for the final time. Henry is here to discuss with me the talking points today. Henry, how are you doing?
I'm good. I've been sitting on this for such a long time. I need to talk about it. I need to get it out. And I've seen a lot of other channels have been willing to talk about it this soon because the game has only been out a week. So my trepidations are out the window. If you're afraid of spoilers, you've been warned. On your head be it.
And oh boy, do we have a lot to talk about, because the original is different from the remake. They've taken decisions and they've made changes. Basically, we don't know where they're going to take things. Like, what does this mean for the future of the game? Because this is only one part of the remake. There's more parts to come. The changes that they've made, they're going to have a knock-on effect to the future games. So that leaves everything up in the air in terms of how faithful they are to the original. And also, this is called a remake, and it's not. Is it really a remake when they've changed so much? All those things we're going to discuss, and hopefully we can answer some of those questions along the way. Feel free to chime in down in the comments. So let's jump in with the first talking point. So what happens in the original ending versus the remake ending, Henry?
So the original ending is obviously much further down the line than the remake's ending, but this portion of the remake in the original, that ends with the gang. They blow up a bunch of Mako reactors, and these are essentially these big things that suck out energy from the planet and turn it into energy for people to use electricity and whatnot. It's really, really bad. They fuck up all of that. They wreck Shinra's day. Shinra's the big evil corporation, trying to give you the abridged version here. Then they leave Midgar, which is the city, and go off to take on Sephiroth, who is the main villain, the guy with the long white hair that you've probably seen. And then there's about another 30 odd hours of gameplay, so there's a lot more game yet to come based on the original's timeline. Now in Final Fantasy VII Remake, the gang blows up the Mako reactors, they fuck up a bunch of Shinra shit, and then they leave Midgar to go take on Shinra. But just before they leave, there's this huge extra sequence that's probably like an hour, maybe an hour and a half of extra stuff. It's boss fights and exposition, but exposition that no one understands because it's setting the stage for whatever the hell's coming next. So the main thing is that there's this giant creature thing, which is made up of these little things called whispers. Now these are the little ghosts that you've seen throughout the game and was put in a couple of the trailers, and we didn't really know what they are, but they are supposed to be like manifestations of destiny, kind of destiny, you know, the abstract concept of, you know, life going in a specific direction. Their job is to keep that train running. Yeah, I can hear you chuckling. It's fucking weird. It's weird,
It's because you said Destiny, then you clarified what it was, just in case we were confused and we thought it was Destiny the game Destiny,
or Destiny's
not actually
Child.
Destiny the concept.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, they're trying to make something abstract a bit more tangible, which is alright, fair enough, that happens a lot. But this is one of the most Square Enix games that's been for a long time. And a lot of people are comparing it to Kingdom Hearts because of how convoluted and over the top it is. But I'll get onto that in a bit. So their job is to keep the path going, and i.e. the path of the original game and the original course of events, because these whispers come out every now and then to stop you doing something, and it's generally around major story beats. And there's an argument to be had that these whispers represent fans who want things to just be the original, to just follow the original path and not deviate at all. And now these characters have certainly more than a wink and a nudge. It's more like grabbing the audience's head, shaking it and being like, we're changing everything, get on the train or fuck off.
Calm down, now get back to your seat.
So they then go forward and begin to change Destiny and fight this huge monster. And then there's these little other ones which are like representations of Cloud, Barrett, and Tifa. And then you beat all them. It's a bit, you know, over the top and ridiculous. And then you have a fight with Sephiroth himself. Now, he doesn't really show up in this section of the original at all. You see him name dropped, you see his sword, but I think that's basically it.
I mean, I think the fight with Sephiroth kind of makes sense because they have compartmentalized this release. It's one section of the original game, and there was no boss battle at this point other than the big like tank or whatever it was, right? So to put another boss battle in here, it's kind of trying to justify the fact, oh look, it is a complete game. It does have a big boss battle with the big bad guy at the end. So is that, do you think that's part of that? The reason that Sephiroth is there is because they're trying to justify, yeah, it's fine. It's actually really a full game in itself. It's not just one part.
Yeah, they can be like, see, it does end with a big triumphant battle and the hero heroes win. You win the fight, but you don't kill him or anything. He vanishes, as he often tends to do. He's very, enigmatic and mysterious. But my problem with that fight is that it reeks of fan service to me, and it's a remake. That's what it's for. It's for fan service, right? I don't think fighting him here serves the greater plot, because one of the best things about Sephiroth is that he's revealed very, very slowly, and you don't know anything about him or who he is. You just hear his name, and you then have this picture of this guy, and then you see him, and he's like, oh, so he's got really long white hair, I guess. And then you see him do some like crazy powerful stuff, and it's like, oh wow, this guy really means business. And that's even before you see who he is and how horrendously evil he is. So I'm not sure how I feel about having this fight here. It just feels like they thought fans wanted, and non-fans, they think fans and non-fans wanted to fight him because he is, a staple of the series, but I don't think that is to the benefit of the wider story. But again, we don't know yet because the rest of it's not out.
Yeah, and the other thing to consider is for those newcomers to this series, they're not getting the same experience as the original people did, and the people who did love the original for the reasons, for the story reasons, for the way that they revealed Sephiroth in the first place, they're not getting that same kind of feel. It's like, blunt force trauma, slap you in the face, here's Sephiroth, deal with it kind of approach. And I can see why that's kind of riled a few people.
Yeah, a lot of people are very mad about this ending, but I think if you want the quote-unquote true Final Fantasy VII experience, you still should play the original, because this game isn't that, and given what they've implied going forward, it's not going to be that. It's going to be something else completely different, because defying destiny and all that sort of bollocks seems to have generated like split timelines, because one thing that is meant to happen before the game even starts is a character called Zack has to die. He's one of Cloud's best friends. He's a war buddy. He serves with him as part of Soldier and Soldier, like the Super Soldier program, whatever. Without trying to go into too much detail there. He dies. He has to die. And from then on, Cloud has his personality imprinted into his head. So he erases Zack from his memory. All of Zack's victories and defeats, they were his victories and defeats. And that's one of the many twists in the original, is that unfolding and finding out, okay, that everything Cloud says he's done, he hasn't done. Who is he really? There's a huge identity crisis, and it's a very interesting plot point. Very, very convoluted, but still quite interesting. But now in this weird timeline, amidst the fight with the big, ugly, tentacly monster, because it's a Japanese game, of course, it's going to have a tentacle monster, and Sephiroth, there's a shot with Zack, who you haven't seen at all up until this point. You haven't heard his name. You have no idea who he is if you haven't played the original. He is about to go through his final moments, because we've seen that scene play out in the prequel game, Crisis Core, which is all about him. He's supposed to die in that moment. Then you have the big fight, and then it goes back to him, and he survived it. So the most important moment in this character's life was his death, and now that hasn't happened.
Yeah, that's got huge implications, right? Because, Cloud is who he is because of that, what happened there, and the fact that it didn't happen there. Where does that leave the story?
Exactly, that should create a paradox, because, he's dead, but everything that's happened as a result of his death has still happened, so what does that mean? But interestingly, there's a crisp packet or a packet of something that zips past the cameras, blown in the wind, and it has a little dog with a little hat on it, which is like, okay, that's cute, it's the Shinra Dog. But the thing is, the Shinra Dog, which we've seen multiple times throughout the game, it's directly referenced, by the characters. They point it out at you because it points you in the right direction. It's kind of like it's a hidden message from the other characters in the game, like a spy code type thing. That dog is more like a beagle wearing a green helmet, but this dog is more like a Yorkshire Terrier or something, and it's wearing a green cap. So that suggests that this is in some sort of alternate timeline or alternate dimension or something like that, where Zack has survived. And time travel is one thing, but alternate dimensions is an even bigger thing that they're going to have to now try and figure out and deal with.
That's just simple string theory, Henry. I don't know.
Of course. Simple and string theory go hand in hand.
So Back to the Future is a bunch of bullshit?
So death is going to be a really interesting thing going forward, because the characters of Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse, in the original, they die, and it's kind of a big motivator for Barrett in particular, because he has to avenge them. They die when the plate collapses. But in this version, it's kind of unclear about Jesse, but Wedge definitely survives that, and he may die later because he gets attacked by some whispers, and I think he's pushed out of a window. So that's a bit ambivalent? I don't know.
Ambiguous?
Ambiguous, that's the one.
I'm not a smart man.
And Biggs it seems like he dies on the plate in battle, but then we see him wake up in an orphanage covered in bandages later, and next to him is Jessie's glove and her bandana, so that suggests maybe she made it out. So those three characters, while they're not hugely important to the grander story, they are important for character motivations. So if they're not dead, what does that mean?
Yeah, and that's the big question, isn't it? I mean, this is like you've thrown in the same ingredients into the pot, but you're mixing it in, and you've got a different outcome, and that's what they've done here. And it has huge implications for the next couple of games, because there's now a lot of anticipation that they may be built up from players who already knew what the story was going to be, but hang on, it's not that story anymore. What the hell are they going to do next? And maybe that's why they've done it, right?
Oh yeah, it's certainly a confident and ballsy choice. It's one that a lot of people do not like, and I get that, but you have to give them credit for how bold they're being, because they are taking huge risks with one of the most beloved video game IPs of all time. And having played the original, I know exactly what's supposed to happen, but now, because they've changed everything and there's alternate timelines and alternate universes, it's fair game. They can do pretty much anything. But I think the only way for them to do that in a way which is still satisfying to fans and doesn't feel like a slap in the face, like we're just completely changing everything, is to make it part of the evil plan type thing. So in Avengers Endgame, this is the closest example I can think of. In Avengers Endgame, spoiler for that as well. Their plan is to travel back in time to undo what Thanos did in Avengers Infinity War. So I think this situation might be a reverse of that, because in the core timeline, Sephiroth obviously gets beaten. He's the bad guy, the heroes win. Huzzah! But he somehow must have survived, because in Final Fantasy Advent Children, which is the animated movie sequel, this is supposed to be canon, he survives in the life stream, which is like the planet's life force type thing, and can keep coming back over and over again, because the life stream is meant to dictate how history plays out or something weird and convoluted. The cycle of the life stream, like a river, is like the cycle of time, and things will repeat themselves. I'm like, okay, well, if we're going to get behind that, he can then survive and keep coming back. So maybe one of the times he came back, he can influence these whispers and influence the flow of time or whatever, so that he can change how things played out, so that he doesn't end up getting killed, and then can enact his sinister, evil anime bad guy plan. And then the future games just carry on with like a new version of events, but the only way for the characters to stop him is to like correct the timeline and do things the way they're supposed to go, including things like Aerith's death.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm honest, I do like a good time travel story. Yeah. I do like time traveling in my stories. But the question remains, though, should they have changed anything? I mean, people wanted the remake. It says remake on the thing. It's not really a remake. They've changed too much, right? Should people be upset about that? Should they? I mean, the way I see it, right? I'll throw my opinion in here because I've only got... I haven't really played the game, so I don't really know as much as you. But the way I see it, it's like your favorite music artist making a recording on an album, and then you're going to see them live, or you hear another live version, and it's slightly different. They play it slightly different. They sing an extra verse, or they play it in a different way. Isn't it just artists being creative? And because it is the original artists, they're still got the original vision, and it's up to them what they want to do with their IP. So it's just like riffing. It's just like having a different interpretation on the same core story, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really quite fair comparison, actually. Just an artist creating things differently. And I don't think any of these changes are a slap in the face or are disrespectful to the fan base yet. Anyway, they might do something ridiculous later on, like keep Aerith alive. If that happens and they just keep her alive for the sake of it being a feel-good family adventure, then that's gonna piss a lot of people off. But I don't think artists should ever create things just because the fans want them. Just because some fans want a one-to-one remake doesn't mean that as a creator you should necessarily do that. You should do it because you want to, or do it because you want to make changes. And I think, as I said earlier, these changes have made me excited for what happens next. I'm not entirely happy with all of the changes because narratively I don't quite know where it fits into the grand scheme of things. Mainly the fight with Sephiroth, I think it undermines the significance of the final battle. I'm excited by these changes, and I think it's good that they had the confidence to go for it. Calling it remake is a touchy topic, though.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the way I see it, as a casual observer to this whole situation, I've got no vested interest in this, no skin in the game, or whatever the expression is. I just see this as, they call it remake, but they've thrown a splash of mystery in there, right? There's people like you who supposedly know what's going to happen, don't really know what's going to happen, and you're excited because of that. If that was their aim all along, they call it a rebirth or reunion or whatever you've put down on this list here. There's some examples of things they could have been called it some other things. Then they're spoilering it. Really, the fact that they've made these changes, nobody anticipated, and then it comes out of the blue and it generates excitement, it generates buzz. Two dickheads like us are talking about it now on the internet, and you're excited for the next installment. Isn't that what they wanted?
So that rebirth reunion thing, that's something I stole from a YouTube comment I read like yesterday watching one of these other breakdowns or endings explained type videos. So the argument is that this isn't called Final Fantasy Remake Part 1 because it's not Part 1 of the remake. This one game, this one part, is the remake part, and that the rest isn't a remake, it's completely different. So that this one is called Final Fantasy VII Remake, then the next one will be called Final Fantasy VII something else, like Rebirth, because it's the rebirth of the franchise, and now it's all completely different. And then Final Fantasy VII Reunion, because Reunion is one of the parts of the plot. It's a thing in the lore. So they've really got a lot of potential going forward. That's not all good potential. It's certainly potential to fuck everything up and piss off a lot of people. And if the next game bombs massively because people aren't happy, who knows if we'd ever even get a third or more, because we don't know how many they're supposed to be doing. I think everything is on Square right now to take control of the narrative, essentially, both the game narrative and the narrative around the game, and say, okay, here's what we're planning. There's going to be some big stuff. We're not going to spoil anything, but it would be a bit more transparent. And I think once all of the launch period has kind of died down, eventually they're going to come out and talk about it, because they have to.
Well, there you go. That's just what a couple of idiots on the internet think about this whole situation. If you feel free to leave your take on it down in the comments below. Do you like what they've done? Do you want them to just stick to the original source material? Do you want them to diverge completely off track for the next installment? Let us know all your thoughts down in the comments. And that'll do it for us for today. On behalf of Henry and I, we will see you again in the next video. And until then, bye for now.